Hi everyone, I want to show you a Paragon rework concept that I've had a few months ago, and I've written it down and not really touched it since, but I felt like it has become a bit more relevant again to talk about Paragons and how to change this kind of broken system that we have right now. So one of the big issues with the Paragon system in Diablo 3 right now is it creates the incentive to just keep grinding more XP over anything else in the game, basically. So the number one activity that you do is grind Paragons all day, every day, and everything else you kind of get on the side, like the gear, like the gems. And most other activities like T16 farming, bounty farming, uber bosses don't really play much of a role in the end game. It also has the other issues that it makes the competition towards the top end very uneven, so you can usually not really compete on the same ranks as other people with significantly higher Paragons. And it also has the issue that when you want to play multiple classes or multiple builds on the same class and spend a lot of time pushing those builds to the maximum, you are essentially just wasting your time compared to just grinding up more Paragons and then doing the same tier much more easily. This is already an issue when you're just focusing on one build for the entire season, but this effect essentially multiplies by the amount of builds you want to play, to the point where farming Paragons is everything. I'm pretty sure most people are well aware of this and that Paragon farming is way too strong. People getting 6 trillion, 8 trillion XP per hour, farming essentially like a full tier worth of damage in like a day or two towards the start of the season, and then maybe a week or two towards the end of the season. And even after 3 months of grinding, when you're Paragon 7k or so, you still have a pretty big incentive to keep going, even that extremely ludicrous high number. Because the time it takes to gear up the last few bits of your items to the maximum, to grind out that last one tier of items compared to grinding out another tier just from Paragons, is usually much higher. Suggesting some updates to the Paragons is long overdue. This has become a problem ever since Season 3, and the Paragons have not changed at all, like ever. The only thing that we got in between are augment gems, but augment gems have become their entirely own problem because, again, with multiple leaderboards, with many sets to push, you just don't have the time. You don't get enough augments right now, so this is another thing for another day. But essentially, augments are not enough to make up for the difference in Paragons. Personally, I've seen a lot of rework ideas for Paragons and how to change the infinite scaling, perhaps. So this could be like some kind of lazy reworks, like just straight up reducing the Mainstat gain from 5 per level to maybe 2 or 1 per level. That's like one of the easy solutions, but it would also mean like a straight nerf that a lot of people would probably not really agree with, even though it evens out the competition a bit more. I think one of the other issues that the Paragon system has is that it's just too boring, so there is basically no choices involved, and you just fill out everything at the Paragon 800, you throw everything into Mainstat, maybe a bit of mentality, and that's about it. And lastly, there is a lot of toughness scaling. So what happens in Diablo 3 is it's basically the only game that I know where going to a higher difficulty makes the game easier. And what I mean with that is that when you have a character that has basically perfect gear and you want to grind out another tier worth of greater rift pushing potential, so let's say you're pushing Bone Spear and you're at 145 and you want to go to 146 with the exact same rift. So you go from Paragon 2.5k to around Paragon 3k, 3.1, 3.2, something like that will give you plus minus 1 tier. But at the same time, when you grind out this extra, let's say 700 Paragons to get this 17% extra damage to kill monsters in exactly the same rift 1 tier higher, you also gain a lot of toughness straight up from the extra aura, and your toughness scales much faster than the damage of the monsters. Monster damage increases by 2.3% per tier, but your toughness will increase by something like 5% perhaps, or 6 even. So somewhere around that ballpark. And obviously this probably becomes more and more the higher you go, to the point where some builds are pretty much unplayable in low Paragon and extremely easy at high Paragon. And that makes it so that some of the high-end pushes at the end are basically just making the game a cakewalk, apart from actually playing the rotation properly and fishing for a good map. Some people have also suggested something like a Paragon cap, but I believe this is completely unrealistic to expect, and it's also pretty unhealthy for the game. But I think something like soft capping to the point where you get like pretty good returns for your investment, and then you get like a little bit smaller returns than now for further investment would be a pretty good idea. And with all those things combined, I have created this concept here, which is very oriented towards what we have currently in the game. I actually took a lot of the current stats that you gain and altered them slightly, or I just added new. And I also gave it a bit of a choice so that you can customize your character a little bit as well. So let's jump into it. Here's the Paragon rework concept, and it's supposed to work pretty similar to what it does in the game right now. So I don't want to completely, change everything. So we have the same Paragon trees or Paragon categories that are currently in the game. There's core, then there is offense, there's defense, there's utility. So we see like some of the same stats here. And I also added a fifth one here, which I call specialization. And in total, I want to put 5 times 50 points into each of them, but each of them should also have more stats than they do currently, which would be up to 10. So essentially, you choose half of the stats that are available to you, and you just leave out all the others here, so that you don't completely fill up everything, but you have 250 points in this and this and this, and there's 10 different things to choose from. What those are, I will show in a second. But for the core category, this will work a bit differently than it does right now. So again, you choose 5 out of those basically 10 stats here, and the 10th one will be the infinite main stat scaling. I want to remove vitality here entirely, because I believe that it would make gearing a lot more interesting if you just can't become invincible from adding infinite vitality to your build, and it would force people a little bit more to think about their item choices and make defensive stats much more desirable than they are now, compared to where you just grind high paragons, fill up everything here with lots of int and vitality, and then you just roll off everything on your gear in favor of other offensive stats like area damage. For the main stat Paragon scaling, I have this concept. So essentially, after reaching 1250, which would mean 250 in each category, so you have everything maxed out with 5 out of 10 stats, you will start stacking main stat. So it's a bit higher than now, where it starts at 800, but I think 1250 is still like a very acceptable number. And it starts very high. You get 10 stats per point for 250 points. Then you get 8 per point for the next 250. Then you get 6 per point for the next 250. And once you reach Paragon 2K, first of all, you get a 5th passive that unlocks for your character or for all your characters, and kind of as an incentive to grind towards a certain goal in the season, and give you like a little bit of a power spike there. And then you have the infinite main stat, just like now, where you keep putting in after every level, but you get 2 instead of 5 per point. What it does is it still keeps Paragons quite interesting, and it would allow people that really want to grind a lot, like Paragon 5k, 6k, 7k, whatever, to keep grinding, keep getting an advantage. So someone who is Paragon 5k will still have 6,000 more main stat than someone who is Paragon 2k. And 6,000 main stat on a character that has maybe around 20k or maybe 22k or so is still an increase of 30%. So we're talking about around 2 tiers worth of extra damage and even more toughness. But what it would do is it would just bring closer the competition a bit. It wouldn't allow people to just kind of outgrind everything super easily. And it would also put a much larger focus on the gearing aspect of the game, which right now is really undervalued. You have high Paragon people just switching class or switching build, basically throwing on whatever crappy pieces they can find in like 2 hours, and suddenly get some big rank. And I think it would be much more interesting if you are focusing more on the items to actually optimize your character. Obviously, towards the very high end, let's say after Paragon 5k, 6k, this would overall mean pretty much a nerf, but I don't think this is necessarily a bad idea. And there's very few people that actually reach those numbers anyway. And again, it would still give you a pretty solid incentive to keep grinding if you want to gain an edge over the competition, because 30% extra damage is no joke. This is definitely making it significantly easier for you to compete against someone with a weaker character. And as someone who likes to push for top ranks in the leaderboards, I think something like this range is acceptable to be behind another person to still try to compete with them. For the other stats in core, you will choose 5 out of those 9, the 10th one being the main stat at the end that you scale infinitely, so kind of keep your eye elements in similar places. And here's again the movement speed, the resources, so this is essentially what we have already. I added some other kind of like useful stats, especially crowd control reduction is a stat that the int classes want when you don't have any perma crowd control immunity like Vengeance or Wrath of the Berserker. I think this is really great, and it would make playing those builds a bit more bearable because you don't get constantly feared everywhere and stunned and all these kind of things. And it's typically quite hard to get jewelry that has this stat. Also, I think it would be pretty cool to add both soft CC and hard CC to this, because this would allow you to play certain builds with having a proc based on a stun, or more damage based on stun, or later combined with one of the specialization combos you're gonna see. You can kind of decide to go for both those stats at the same time. Similar with health globes. I think health globes are a pretty cool mechanic in the game. They would help you to heal up sometimes, and they're actually dynamic. So you can choose to leave it on the ground for a while. You can choose to pick it up immediately when you're in trouble. Same with Nephalem Glory. Nephalem Glory is also giving you slight effects like a bit more movement speed. So maybe this buff could also be improved a little bit. This would help console players a little bit. So why not? Here's the offense category. So again, you choose 5 out of those 10 here, and this goes the same for all the other categories. So we have basically the same stats as in the game right now. There's the attack speed, the cooldown, the crit, and then I added a few more. For example, 20% elite damage. I moved area damage here and lowered it to half from the utility stat because this one is a bit changed. Here's 40% damage against bosses. I believe especially Rift Guardians are a big deal for a lot of builds, and most Rift Guardian fights are kind of boring, and when they last like 3, 4, 5 minutes, yeah, that's pretty bad. And it would just make boss fights a little bit more bearable. And I think some builds might just want to stack both of these to kill bosses pretty fast, and it could also allow to not run Bane of the Stricken in every single pushing build. Here's 10% resource generated. I think that some builds can profit from this. And here's something that I consider very interesting. So 150% non-critical damage increase. I was also considering making like a legendary gem for this when Blizzard ever decides to add new legendary gems. But this would essentially open up a whole new avenue of customizing a character and making builds where you just completely ignore crit stats. So you do permanently 250% damage instead of 100% damage like 40% of the time, and then 450% damage or 500% damage like 60% of the time. So it would overall still be like a bit of a net loss, but you have to see that you gain a lot of primary affixes. That could be attack speed, that could be area damage, that could be resource, and it would be very interesting to see what kind of builds come out of something like this, where you choose this and you can go for these other stats as well without investing into double crit here. So you get some benefits, and I think we need much more stats like this, or any kind of like legendary effects that would allow you to completely change how you build a character. And lastly, I moved something like this here. So we have a mini stricken effect that would work in AoE. I'm not sure if this would be too strong or not. Maybe it would be a bit OP, maybe this number should be reduced, but I think this would make pushing quite interesting. And for a lot of builds that have especially high attack speed, that would be nice. And attack speed is overall a rather low value stat for pushing builds because area damage is king, and it would put a bit more emphasis there. So I thought putting something like this here, or just in general, there are a lot of cool legendary effects in the game that you wouldn't really put on your character because you don't have enough slots. For example, there's something like Envious Blade, which you'll see later in the Paragon tree, where I put like a similar effect there. Or there's something like Saint Archu's Gauge, where you get like the little shield here, or you have something like Krelm's Buff Belt. These are all pretty cool effects, and I think putting like a mini version of those, or even putting like a mini version of some other legendary gems into the Paragon system, where you can make like a bit of a choice, a bit of character customization, would be really cool. So this is why I put something like this here. The best part is that all these effects are pretty much in the game already, so they just have to be, copied and maybe altered a little bit. Here's the defense tree. So again, you choose 5 out of 10. I put vitality here instead of in the core, so you have the option to run vitality. You have the same with all res and armor. I increased the armor value a bit because it's usually a bit worse, and typically the in classes need a bit more extra armor here to survive. And then I put all kinds of like melee, elite damage reduction and all these things. Here's like a little like low life protection passive. I think would be cool to have. There are some dodge chance. So overall, you can kind of like decide, you want to stack a lot of dodge, maybe have like some extra scaling with, not getting hit like a Squirt's necklace. So you want to take this, for example, and maybe you play like some kind of like Chimizu build. You want to go with this, or you just, feel like, generally you're having a lot of trouble against archers. So you can take something like this. So you can kind of like choose what to go for, or you go like for the overall reduction here. Just basically normal stats and you choose a little bit. And here's the utility. So again, 5 out of 10. We have like the same stuff already. Bring back the gold find. Here's the pickup radius. I moved all the life per something here because this is not necessarily needed in every single build. So I wanted to focus the defense tab on actual damage reduction, and I put the recovery here. So most builds will probably take at least those two, I guess, at least for pushing. But if you're farming T16 or if you're farming low GRs or something, you probably wouldn't want any of this. So you can go for, extra shrines, because why not? Here's thorns as well. I thought this could be added somewhere because, it would give them like a bit of an incentive as well to get those paragons. Here's like a little bit of shielding that you can add for every single class, because right now you have the molten wildebeest for that. And I also added some auto pickup of crafting materials. I think this would also be something worth putting here for, when you kill like the golden pack and you just, run in a little circle and you got everything, because why not? And lastly, here's a specialization. So this will be, it's just like a straight up 5th category, as I explained. And here it's basically a little bit like these special effects that make your character. So for example, you have like a little Zaze effect, or we have like a little kind of like melee effect. And you have like something against crowd controlled enemies. We have something for like, high crit chance builds. So maybe you want to take something like sharpshooter or signal out on your build as a demon hunter. You have something like you take less damage at the start or just in general. I also feel like you could do something with health globes. So especially if you combine this with the core health globe bonus, where you kind of like regularly spawn health globe once in a while, and sometimes you kill an enemy and you get some health globes there. You could get like a bit of a boost here. I also think something like this could be quite funny for certain effects where you have a low chance to get like a big double damage hit if you want to go for that. Like imagine you're playing like a star packed wizard and suddenly you throw 2 of those star packs with like the exact same values down on your enemy. So that could be quite funny and lead to some very memorable experiences. And that's about it for my Paragon rework idea. So I hope you enjoyed this, maybe have some input, maybe you like something in particular, or maybe you think this is totally garbage, or you have even like your own whole concept. I'd be very curious to hear about this. And I think that Blizzard is well aware that paragons are a big issue, and maybe they are also looking for some inspiration about what to do. So maybe this will help. In the past, I've cooked up some much more crazy systems as well, but I haven't really fully fleshed them out because it would be too unrealistic. But I try to keep it, kind of close to what everyone knows already, while still adding a bit more choice, a bit more flexibility, a bit more just interesting stuff to it, and not really feeling like everything would get nerfed by reducing the core main stat scaling. So let me know what you think about those ideas, and hope you guys like this, and I'll see you guys next time.